Podcast LaSalleOrg.
Welcome to this episode of the series Limited, Fragile, Free. There are young people who have many questions about their identity. It is also part of the fragilities. In life, we find gray areas where not everything is clear. Often, we meet real people who need to be listened to and accompanied from their existential realities and questions. This episode is entitled Them, Us, Truth, Love, and Blurred Lines.
Podcast LaSalleOrg.
Your podcast, our podcast.
Is it a girl or a boy? At 16 weeks pregnant, this question is simple enough for now. As of 2022, there are as many as 25 sexual identities dotting the spectrum. The biological sex of a person is based on their chromosomes, genitalia, and other born factors. Gender, though, refers to a person's expression and can be any of the 25 current options. Sexual orientation, meanwhile, refers to the individual one is attracted to or not. And lastly, there's the romantic orientation, which identify which individual a person is romantically involved with, regardless of their sexual orientation. It is a dizzying array, and while gender identities are valid, one cannot help but worry how much of it is also an influence of the environment. Identity crises are part and parcel of growing up. And while it's already a confusing time, the sheer volume of stimuli also from mass media, social media, and the internet can create quite the anxiety for the parent. Parents are rightly concerned that the already confusing time that is puberty can be aggravated by all of these new norms.
I'd like to think that I'm a fairly liberal person. I count members of the LGBTQ+ community as some of my dearest friends. One of them is a fully transitioned trans woman with whom I feel like I've already been friends in a past life. I have a gay best friend who was my man of honor at my wedding. I was there for him when he came out in his early 20s and have always been the big sister who accepted him, unlike his flesh and blood sibling who rejected him at first. And I am in close friendship with gays and lesbians and empathize with their struggles. In my home country, being LGBTQ+ is not a deterrent to employment. In fact, I also have seen multiple friends rise to the highest ranks of technology, FMCG, fast-moving consumer goods, and of course, fashion and entertainment. Our society is relatively accepting, and while there have been isolated incidents of harm against the community, by and large against the rest of the world, here they have less fear and more safety. However, there are reality checks still. My lesbian friends shared to me their problems finding a reputable school for their son as he was about to enter elementary. Apparently, certain academic institutions still demand a marriage license as one of the prerequisites for a child's enrollment. My trans woman friend has no problems with employment, but has a quiet struggle being able to travel abroad. What one might think of as basic, inalienable rights like traveling or knowing which bathroom to use become very serious navigations and negotiations when one is in the trans spectrum. And then, of course, with my baby, what worries I might not have with my friends, whom I know can ably handle themselves, can be very real. I have very heteronormative in-laws. I trace my ancestry to a country where as recently as this year has legally allowed same-sex civil unions, but not the full rights of a married heterosexual couple. Seeing through this lens, I suddenly realize how many difficulties and obstacles are traversed by members of their community, and all this has tested my sense of allyship and made me understand how much deeper their problems and issues run. One scenario is enough to make one lose sleep. So I return to this, only the truth. If it is their truth, so be it. Pregnancy, I've come to discover, is a truly full surrender to fragility, to feel life inside me, and to have the immense responsibility of nurturing it can bog the rational mind. This can only be a miracle. This can only be further proof of God. This can only be a creation of the divine. As much as I love my science lessons, and I have binge-watched all manner of YouTube videos on conception and pregnancy, my prevailing conclusion is still that this spark of life can only have come from something greater. I pray that my child will have a strong sense of self, and that I will be wise and generous enough as a parent to be able to cultivate it. I know that I will parent at a time when there are constant contractions from social media, where the edge is constantly being pushed, and yet also where lines are blurred. Thus, my final prayer and answer is love. During my difficult childhood, this was the one truth that anchored me across those storms. It was this truth that healed me enough to grow up evolved to stop the generational trauma, but also hopefully not too hardened to become a loving and giving parent. There is only ever love, and my wish is that my child will never want of it, from either me or the world.
Thank you for listening. Every week we will have a new episode of Limited, Fragile, Free. Follow us and share LaSalleOrg podcast. Your podcast, our podcast. See you soon. LaSalleOrg is a podcast produced by the Office of Information and Communication of the Institute of the Brothers
of the Christian Schools.